really a breath of fresh air after the Liberals.
Selby is a small forest town on the outskirts of Melbourne in the Dandenong Ranges. In the 1970s, Selby was even smaller, with steep, unmade roads, no public buildings, one shop, and sparse public transport. Not everyone had a telephone or a car, often leaving women isolated at home. Life was tough, but rents were cheap. This is the story of residents, particularly women, who found their voice through community building and collaboration. Selby Community House, one of the earliest such houses in the country, is an example of a community learning to articulate its needs in an era of great social change, nationally and globally. Jocelyn Ayton, key driver of the project, and other founding members share their reflections of the birth of Selby Community House.
So it was the early 70s, and the time of, for politics, the time of Whitlam, time of enormous change.
Well, it was an absolute blossoming that came out of the Whitlam government. Arts and just an incredible period, a lifting of everybody's spirits.
Whitlam actually came to Ferntree Gully on a really hot night, and the place was absolutely packed to bursting, and there were members of the Labor Party going around with buckets, and everyone was sort of putting money in, and the atmosphere was absolutely electric.
It wasn't normal that we'd have a government that would say, "Go for it," and let us know what you think. I mean, that was so unusual, wasn't it?
The community development movement occurred concurrently with the counterculture movement, women's liberation, environment movement, anti-Vietnam moratoria, colonial independence movements, and Aboriginal land rights.
For Gough to come in, sort of following that wave, was just an amazing thing. Gough and Jim Cairns. The two of them. Oh, they were just amazing, weren't they?
Yeah.
Well, there was, it was empowering for women, but not so much for me. I was married young. By the time I was 22, I had 2 children. So women's liberation was around, but, I was living in Selby, isolated, without a car. So it was there, but I didn't really get to tap into it very much. And the way I got to tap into it was I read an article in the Free Press that Jocelyn had come back to Australia, and she was looking for other women that were isolated in the community to form a playgroup that would move around different people's homes and that would really help empower women to get out, break the isolation, meet other women, and just support each other. So, of course, I rang her immediately when I saw the article, and the playgroup was formed. People rang Jocelyn, and I spoke to my neighbours, and other people that were interested, spoke to people, and the playgroup started. And it was just fabulous because everyone was isolated. And of course, Jocelyn started all that. And she is just an amazing woman with such foresight. And with that playgroup, I didn't really understand what she was going to get into, but she's a brilliant person.
And then so Gough, remember, he introduced the Australian Assistance Plan, and that whole idea was about participatory democracy.
Yeah.
And communities working out what they wanted and then applying for funding and getting it, and then setting up what they wanted to set up. And I think that...
He set up the beginning of that access.
The newly elected Whitlam government initiated the Australian Assistance Plan and its regional counterpart, Access. In 1974, a group of women from Selby, led by Jocelyn Aitan, organised the Children of the Region Task Group Survey. Over 3 months, the women went door to door, interviewing 150 different organisations, groups and local households.
I had a phone call from somebody who said she was doing a survey of what the area needed. I was fascinated by what she was doing and what she was planning to do, and we had a very animated discussion for the whole of lunchtime. I remember hearing the children at the door, and I hadn't properly had my lunch yet because we were so busy talking. And she was quite clear about what she wanted, that she wanted to do something that was going to provide, particularly for women and families who were so isolated, and I had a lot to say about that, as well as the community in general, because the community was an artistic and creative community, as well as pockets of older people who had been there an awful long time and who were quite conservative. So she was very anxious to make sure that whatever was set up for the needs of the entire community.
Was that when you decided to do the needs survey for the area?
Yes, so that was when we decided. But we had to find some, we had to get the people, so we got people from the playgroup to do it. I mean, no one had done such a survey before. And we got the Women's Electoral Lobby.
Yeah, that's
we got
right.
some of them.
Yeah.
And just some bystanders, really. We just went out and interviewed everybody, and it was a face-to-face interviews we were doing.
Yeah.
So it was pretty raw at times.
But yeah, you must have got so much information, it would be hard to know what to do with it all.
Yeah, well, we did, and it was hard.
Well, do you know what I think was good with that was that a lot of stuff came out about the needs of women and children, what they needed,
Yeah.
whereas in the past it was all about the needs of men in our patriarchal society, and now all of a sudden stuff's coming out about the needs of women and children, and I think that's really important.
Yes, well, what came out overall was the lack of communication at all levels.
The survey results showed 3 key issues: the shortfall in opportunities for children and isolated women, the lack of transport and formal meeting places, and a general lack of communication within the community. An underused old house on Minack Reserve, owned by the Shire of Sherbrooke, was pitched as a potential communal building to host the ever-expanding playgroups and community meetings.
Jocelyn was already knew about, I think the house was vacant on Minack Reserve, but she used the playgroup as a support mechanism, and we wrote letters, we did all sorts of things to help with the funding to get the house. So that grew out of women, isolation, children, and all really wanting to support each other.
In June 1975, the Shire agreed to ratify the old Minack House as a community centre. Funding was provided by Access to aid the setup, and volunteers got to work straight away on repairs.
I mean, the amazing thing with the house at Selby, it was an old condemned house that was over the top of a stream, with an open fireplace, and as Joss said, cats, rats and bats flying around, wandering around. And in this day and age, there's no way you would be allowed to use something like that. But as you said to me yesterday, you start with what you've got and you build on from there.
Yep.
The house was old. It was very old. And it took a lot of funding. There's bits built on everywhere. But just fantastic to have the house. And all winter the fire would always be going. You know, the people sitting around the fire, people cooking, kids playing in the yard. It was a hive of activity. Everything was donated in the start. Nothing was bought. All the work was volunteer.
well, there's so many things that we had to do, to change the house, because actually there was a floor missing in one of the back rooms. So it just gets worse and worse. And we got people, the playgroup women, their husbands, they became interested. And so they were became involved in the ones that could do carpentry and stuff. We just gradually did it like that. But so it had to be via the community, which it was, and in the end, we also went to Box Hill Tech and got the TAFE students there to help us. They helped us with our solar heating, and they helped us with about 3 rooms, or 2 or 3 rooms.
In August 1975, the Selby Playgroup officially started in Minack House.
I remember I got here first, I don't know, a Tuesday morning, and I had to open up the playgroup room and start to get, the paints out and chairs and everything. And I had my 2 small children. I opened the door and 2 rats ran out. I made sure I was never first ever again. I wasn't opening that door.
There was a piano, a very tinny old piano that wasn't terribly in tune, in what I call the lounge room. And there were some very grotty old sofas, and there were very few toys, just simple ones. So, for instance, if you had water play, you'd have sort of an old bath, and then you'd have some funnels and some bottles and some jugs, everyday, ordinary objects. And the children outside played, I don't remember a sandpit, I do remember a mud pit, which was good fun.
From there, Selby Community House grew.
I think some of the highlights of the early days, was all the women and all supporting. I know I keep saying that, but that's what it was. And then more and more people coming in, and then, let's, find someone we're going to do yoga. And just this slow evolution of the house growing and getting much bigger, and all that, and just the different courses, meditation and pottery and bread making, and of course, led into folk club with Francois and Yetta, and they're just massive. It just grew and grew and grew.
We wanted to mention the house dinners as a good example of the sort of atmosphere in the house.
Oh, yes.
So, and often they were in the middle of winter, and so you'd be sitting around the fire, and everyone would bring something to share. You'd sit around the fire, but the stream would be roaring right under our feet, and you could hear it roaring right under your feet. And kids would be running around, and my younger son, actually, in the middle of winter, we turned around and he'd taken all his clothes off, and he was running around naked in the freezing cold. And there was sort of chaos, but it was a real sense of community, a warm sense of community, wasn't it?
And we had, there were people that came down from, as residents, came down for the meal and whatnot, or bought their meal down.
You didn't have to be a member or anything.
Yes. And they used to play with the kids. I remember one fellow, he was an artist, and he got the kids, they were all around this kitchen table, because that's where we had our meals. So I cleared those away, and then he put down all the things that he needed, and he got the kids all together, and he started teaching them how to paint. Well, they were just really pleased about it, because kids just sort of paint like this and nobody pays much attention. But he did. He had a way of showing them how to do things, and that was one thing. And then, you know, there was another old man that used to come down and play chess, and he fixed our piano, and then he'd start teaching the kids piano, and there were lots of instances like that, and it brought the community in. I really loved the community dinners because I think that they allowed something to develop that normally it wouldn't flow out. It just flowed.
Yeah, and there was a spontaneity.
Yeah.
So someone would do something, and then, or someone might have a guitar, and we all start singing, and
Yeah.
you know, things just happened at them.
Well, the folk club started.
Well, it did, yes.
Yeah.
And the folk club is still going. You know, it's gone for all those years, and we've had folk festivals, and
Yeah.
you know, all that sort of stuff came out. It started with that sort of thing, with people sitting around singing, and developed into, you know, a folk club.
But I got this pretty anchor, and she sleeps deep in my arms. She tells me when I'm out of line. She sees through all my charms. Anchor me, yeah. Anchor me, yeah. She does not like to fly in planes, or me driving cars too far.
Selby Community House quickly developed into a familiar environment where women found a voice and experimented with new possibilities.
To me, the push was to do things the way women would do them, not the way men would do them. And that was what you really worked with when you were working with women's power, because then empowered women, because they didn't have to fit into this sort of rigid hierarchical approach.
Exactly, yes. And we just worked according to our own norms, you know, what we felt was right, and it worked, and I've never experienced anything like it. Working with women who were working off their raw energy and haven't been manipulated by the patriarchy, and just raw women, and it's just fantastic.
And it was shared power.
Yes.
Which is the difference.
Yes, and it's just natural, and if we could have more time and more of it, we'd be able to get it more into the community, and so that people could understand it.
There's a real feeling of comradeship that we have, we women, together. You know, we all help, I don't think I can describe it any better. It's a real feeling of comradeship. That implies a togetherness as well as a giving. And I think comradeship is really important.
We formed a committee, but it was very loose. In fact, the first day I was invited by Rhonda to the house. The first day I got there, I was asked to run the school holiday program, and the second day I went there, I was asked to run the committee. And I was sort of like, oh, right, okay. But so it was very loose like that, you know, like I only just turned up. Nobody knew me other than Rhonda. But we got...
Yes, we didn't.
We introduced consensus decision making, and it was totally different from, like, we talk about it these days and it's all cool, but, you know, then it was a new way of operating, and it took ages.
Well, actually, what we were doing was changing the way that we, as community organisations, the way that we operate. It was totally changing it. And nobody realised, I don't think, certainly the Conservatives didn't actually realise, did they? And
No.
it's the best way of doing anything. That's what I realised, that the most radical way of doing anything is just to sort of do it as if it's, you know, and the same as every other day. It's just the normal thing. And
I can remember everything was so innovative. There wasn't after-school care anywhere that I know of. We started after-school care. School holiday programs. We had a school holiday program years before anybody else did. And that's all coming out of people talking our needs. We need this, what can we do? Yeah, there was a lot of innovation.
I think we were trying to redefine the whole idea of democracy. And I think we were starting to do it because I had some people coming up to me at one stage saying, just this, and they'd got that idea of redefining that word was important.
We created like a participatory democracy in the Shire of Sherbrooke.
Yeah.
And if the councillors didn't do what we wanted, they didn't get back in. And I knew every single councillor by name. And I could talk to every single councillor. And I'd ring them up and say, what is happening with this or that? And it was very strong in Sherbrooke. So when Kennett came in, he thought that was very, very, very threatening. So he made the Shire of whatever it's called, Yarra Ranges. And of course we were totally swamped and totally lost, and he destroyed it.
Yeah.
And he found it threatening. And that's participatory democracy is threatening to the status quo.
And so, people even think that on the other side think that it's like communism.
Yeah. The house was a model of something that operated totally differently from the mainstream society. And the autonomy was really important because otherwise mainstream society crept up on it and took it over. At one stage, people had lost track of that sort of stuff. I was asked to go back on the committee and a couple of other people went. I'd left, but I went back. And what we did was, because a couple of the old people came back, we said, well, where's all the philosophy? Where's the house philosophy? What philosophy? We have no idea. And I said, it's all written down, and we got it out, and we based our decisions about what was happening on the philosophy. So it just was so important because all our decisions really were based on that philosophy and the aims and objectives that took so long to do. So,
yes. It's a seed that seems to grow if it's planted, Even now when you ask people what was Selby House about, they say, oh, well, Selby House was much more experimental than the others.
Yeah.
So it was seen as being different.
As part of her ongoing philosophy, Jocelyn documented her approach to the role of women within the community development movement.
In emphasising the political role of women, it is not my intention to undermine the significance of the male role in society or dichotomise the sexes. I am attempting to explore, define and retrieve an area of female power, as in power with rather than power over, that is still not acknowledged or understood, recognised or valued in Western culture by men or in fact by many women. Partnerships can only work between those sharing an equal power base. As long as inequality between men and women is tolerated, our so-called democracy is merely a sham. Thus, it is spoken.
The impacts of Selby Community House have been far-reaching. It was instrumental in establishing the first home-based family daycare in Australia, the first training site of community development studies, the first Shire Community Directory, the first annual Shire Children's Day, Selby Folk Club and the Let's scheme. It fostered the establishment of Sherbrooke Children's Centre, Sherbrooke Community School and Conara Community School.
I can remember in about 1985, Louise Morford and Denise Sebage were the coordinators. I think they were sharing. And So we were, we'd been going a while and everything was clicking over very well, and we're out into community and we had the seniors coming down for an afternoon. And what was then Wanturna TAFE approached the house to come up and talk to them about what was happening, what they did, who came in and out, and what did you do. And they were writing the community development course. How do you write a community development course? You come in to where it's done.
Yeah.
So we actually started those community development courses that then became part of TAFE and were taught to a whole range of people.
Absolutely.
Which I taught in. And a lot of the people that were involved in the house taught in the courses.
Yes.
So that's an important legacy, because then that spreads it to further and further.
But I think that the community houses are amazing in how influential they can be educating people, and that's what I found, that they were the best educators of all, because you can just get into the kitchen and have a chat about this and that, and it's amazing what you have chats about, isn't it? And that's the way you open people's minds and you change them.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible feat, and actually really hard, I think, to take in, that this group of women had managed to do this. Of course, it wouldn't have happened without Jocelyn, her incredible knowledge. I got the key off her and I opened the door and came in, and I just had an overwhelming feeling that this group of women had actually achieved this. It was incredible. Really was.
Thanks to the dedicated work of women like Jocelyn Ayton, Rhonda Stevenson, Anne O'Dwyer and Susan Hayward-Downard, Selby Community House stands as a testament to the power of women working collectively.
So I think women and community houses have got it going for them if they want to look at it, as a powerful tool for change.
And it's more long term, it's more solid and long term. It's not just a flash in the pan.
Yeah, so it's still there, waiting, and it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there are lots of them. The legacy, I don't know that's the legacy really, yeah. There's still hope.
I suppose in that last 3 years I've become more involved in the house and just realise what a good, how the ideas that Jocelyn had 50 years ago and the energy and the time and the effort that she put in, how richly rewarding that has been for the whole community here, really. Anybody that's involved realises, how much it enriches their lives, really. It's certainly enriching mine.
Well, she took my heart to a trader in metal. She said it's heavy, it's hard, and what price can we settle? He said slow down, slow down. To me your heart is worthless. Slow down and look around. My wares are only precious. So she took my heart to a businessman in Asia. She said it's working, it's strong, and at what price can you offer? He said slow down, slow down. Your Western heart can't help us. Slow down and look around. Your item is in surplus.